makes magic in business like Disney. Join us as we hear from Disney cast members, influencers, and enthusiasts to uncover the secrets of what it takes behind the scenes to make Disney such a successful and well-loved brand. We will hear their journeys, inspirations, and have some good old-fashioned Disney fun along the way. So relax, pull up a chair, be our guest, and let's get down to Bippity Boppity Business. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bippity Boppity Business, the ultimate Disney podcast where magic meets entrepreneurship. I'm so excited to have this really fun live stream today. This episode features a really special guest, Theron Skees, who's just amazing, guys. Like I could read his bio for like ever and ever, but honestly, all you need to know is that he's been an Imagineer at Disney. He has over 30 years of experience, and right now he is the founder and creative executive of the Designers Creative Studio. Let's hear from him about his journey and all that stuff. But I just want to let you all know, if you are tuning in live, you are going to have the unique experience of being able to ask any questions or engage into the conversation. And to let you know what the topic is, which is very Disney-esque, we're going to be talking today about Theron's unique philosophy about turning customers into fans. And we're going to discover how brand storytelling and experience creation can just transform some of your passive, more transactional customers into lifelong, dedicated audience members and fans who follow brands not just for what they are and but for what they maybe will become, or even more than that. It's the emotion, it's the heart, it's everything. And before I get into it and Disney nerd off, let's welcome Theron to the stage. Everyone, let's welcome Theron. Thank you, Theron.
Great to be back with you, Rita. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, it's so happy to see. I'm so happy to see you again. Even Snow White, she's clapping along. We're really happy for the
so
for the
cool.
reintroduction. So,
Wow.
Theron, we got all the glitz and glam, a little bit of pixie dust happening too to welcome you to the show. So let's have a Disney business party. Woohoo!
Love it.
All right. Well, Theron, before we get into too much of our conversation today, I would love for you to just share any type of Disney moment or kind of a moment in your life that left a lasting impression on you to allow you to kind of dive into this journey. Something must have resonated at some point in your life to go, I think I want to be a storyteller and grow brands. I don't think, you just kind of woke up one day and thought that, right?
That's true. It's true. I came to the Disney company and Imagineering in general through kind of an interesting way. When Star Wars first came out, yes, I'm that old.
Yes.
I saw Star Wars when I was 10, and that was kind of this catalyst that said, that was so cool. I want to do that. And, at 10, you don't know what that is. But soon I kind of put that together as I want to be in the film industry. And that's really how I started. I moved to Florida at a time when Disney was building what was the MGM Studios at the time. It's now Disney Hollywood Studios. And Universal was building all of their studios, and movies were being made, TV shows, commercials. And I was really fortunate to be there at that right time and kind of start working there. What I realized about film was it's not permanent. That stuff all kind of goes away. Stuff gets thrown away or recycled. And so I made this transition into theme parks, starting with Universal Studios and then ending up with Disney for 23 years at Imagineering.
Wow. And just to get into the core of our conversation here, I think that same thing that you notice with films not being forever is very much what's happening for brands today when it comes to their digital content or their advertising, wherever it may be, traditional or new age, TikTok, whatever it is, right? So I think your philosophy of converting customers into audience members is more important now than ever. So I would love for you to just baseline explain a little bit about what that exactly is for someone who's tuning in to try to apply that to their own business.
Sure. Well, I think I would point out three kind of big elements that kind of all converged in my mind and in my career that brought me to this place. The
Yeah.
first and probably the largest, of course, is Disney. You know, when you're an Imagineer and you're working for Disney, this sort of brass ring, if you will, the gold star of experiences worldwide. You know, the thing that they do the very best is make this emotional connection with
Mm,
their guests. They're not customers, they're guests, and that term is super important to the Disney company because it sets up the way that these visitors, these travelers, those who engage with the brand should be treated. So that was a big part of establishing that kind of approach. And then two other things, and I would invite your audience, if you haven't, to go look up these books and read them because they're really important. The first was The Experience Economy by Pine and Gilmore from Harvard Press. Amazing. It really talks about, you know, the question that got me when I was reading this book was, if you're a business, how would you change? What would you do differently if you charged admission to the thing that you do, whether it's a service or it's a product that you produce? You know, in a sense, how do you stage an experience around what you do with your brand? That was really impactful and aligned quite nicely with the things that I learned from working at Disney. And then the third and final thing, that element, that information that really converged for me was author Simon Sinek, Starting with Why. And what I really loved about that is it was, you know, Simon really took this approach for individual leaders, but also for companies and brands. And he's the one that said that you don't necessarily want customers to love you for what you do, but you want them to love you for who you are. And that is seeking your why, which is your core belief. So those three things converged in me, and I took that into my current company, the Designers Creative Studio, and that's kind of what I'm most passionate about, is
mm.
converting customers to audience members.
Well, it's so true that even in a niche like, for example, B2B, a lot of the brands focus more on what they do rather than who they are. And that's why I was so excited to bring you on today, because as a follow up to our kind of last conversation, getting more tactical and understanding why this is important is really essential to any brand's growth, right? So,
Mm,
for example,
right,
at Disney, when we go to buy a ticket or whatever, even buying a ticket feels like some type of experience. It's branded. It's part of a
right.
wider, larger message. So when a brand comes to you and maybe they're definitely not there yet at the Disney level, and they acknowledge that, hey, we do have yeah, we have customers, but we want them to be our fans forever. Where do you start? Where's the starting point for that? And I know that's a loaded question, but I would just love to hear your creative like ideation behind that.
No, it's a really great question, because the reality is not everybody can be a Disney or should be a Disney, right? Universal
Right.
shouldn't be Disney, or Merlin shouldn't be Disney.
Right.
Apple, you know, they should reflect their own brand. So where I start with the brand is really to do what I call swim upstream. I
Okay.
think you need to go back to the core brand message. And oftentimes, as you said, brands know what they do really well, and they know how they do that really well, because
Right.
those two things are what trigger the transaction. And in a sense, the transactional setup between what they do and their customer base. And in a sense, there's only a few levers that you can pull when you're working transactionally with a target customer base, right? You can change your margins, you can make it cheaper, you can hire people cheaper, you can do it more efficiently, you know, you can have a sale, you can have a coupon. I mean, there's only so many things that you can do to make your service or your product cheaper and better, and move that way. But when you think about your customers as audience members, what I do is establish a brand story, which
Hmm.
is their why, the company's why. It's different than a goals or an objectives or a mission statement. It really is the core belief. It's who they are. It's why they're doing this. And that's
Mm.
not, as Simon says, it's not to make money, right? And so
Because
once you
people
have
can
that
see right through that, like, "Oh, you're here to
right,
make money," like,
it's
whatever, right?
disingenuous.
Right.
People don't. Gen Z and even millennials are way too savvy for that. They see right
Mm,
through that, and it doesn't work anymore. So once you
mm,
have that core brand story that is reflectant on the company's why, the brand's why, well, then what you can do with that is you can look at all the touch points that touch all of the existing customers within that brand's reach. That could be socials, that could be a website, that could be how you train your employees. It could be your frontline brand ambassadors or your employees. It could be the stores, the physical stores, the product, every single thing that touches your brand, your brand touches your customers. Now you can tell consistent brand stories. And my
mm,
goal is to help brands to create experiences. So every connection with the touch point should be an emotionally engaging experience wherever possible, because guess what that does? That links your customer to your brand through an emotional experience. Isn't that what Disney does the best? Isn't that why
right.
people come back every year, year over year? So I try to bring that to brands to convert customers to audience members, right? Who want to come back and experience again.
Well, it's so true that you said that because when I think about some of my most memorable experiences, there is an emotion tied to it. So, for example, even in the sales process, I feel like if I were to be with a potential client and we were to share a fun, memorable, somewhat positive
Mm,
emotion or experience that really garners that emotion, I'm more likely to remember that person, but that potential client too also has that positive connection as well.
yeah.
And I think, while maybe every brand can't go obviously build a theme park, there
Right.
are certain things that can be done to create that. So, do you have a couple of small, like easy examples for a way that somebody, maybe even just on social media or wherever from your experience, can take those smaller steps to go from the transactional interactions to those more transformational and immersive ones?
Right. I think one of the most important factors for any business to realize is those touch points is the way that I've described them, right? It's kind of a
Mm,
marketing word, but
yeah,
in your mind, imagine every place where the members of your audience or the members of of your customer base that you want to be audience touch your brand. And some of the most impactful ones are when your employees interface or interact with those customers. How many times have we been to a retail store? I'll make up an experience,
right.
and you have this really great experience in the store. You love the product. I was at an outdoor store. I was looking for hiking boots, and they had this really cool themed sort of rock thing that you could climb on. And I was like, wow, cool experience. It's so amazing. Laid down the credit card, went and took them home, had an issue later, called back, got in the call center, which was horrible. The experience was so bad. It sucked all the life out of that experience. And I ended up taking the shoes and returning them because
Mm,
that so poisoned the overall experience that I didn't want anything to do with the brand anymore. How many times has that happened to any of your audience members, just as customers, just as interfacing? And you could look at that across so many different, elements, different touch points. And as you have a consistent way to tell a brand story, you can then craft unique experiences for each one of those, because an online experience or an experience with a brand through a social, it's going to be very different than an in-person engagement with a brand ambassador. So I don't know, I just throw that out to consider.
yes.
There's lots of different ways, but once you understand the why and you've got that story nailed, now you're telling consistent brand stories and creating consistent experiences across the whole brand's platform. That's pretty important, I think.
Well, I think a really good, potentially relative example would be Tom's when they sold shoes, right?
Yeah,
Their messaging was very much not like, okay, we're just selling shoes. There was
right,
something more to it. There was a mission. There was a hero's like journey. There was
right.
something to have been accomplished from the shoes, right? So I
Yeah,
think, somebody listening to this might go, well, you know what, Theron, we sell manufactured parts. Like we sell parts to other companies, or we're a logistics company. What kind of journey do we have, or whatever? But I would love to hear your okay, why not type question. How do you start to
Right.
brainstorm and start to think a little more innovatively and out of the box to try to uncover that question?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the really important thing to take away from this kind of mindset, and
Right.
it's much more than a theory, right? It's been applied by the Disney company, for example, since 1955, right? It's been applied in the themed entertainment industry as a whole for decades and decades. And then you also, I'm sure your listeners can recall any experience that you've had anywhere in
Right.
any segment of the global economy, whether it's a hotel, a travel, anything. So I think the key thing here is the relationship between a human being and a brand. I think at
Mm,
the end of the day, that's whether it's logistics, whether it's B2B,
whatever.
um, most every segment of the economy, every market, there's competition, right? And there are things that drive differentiation. And of course, I worked a lot with brands that help that. If you sell shoes and you've got, you know, other companies that sell shoes and they're competing with you, how do you differentiate? Usually, when you're selling the similar service or a similar product, the way you differentiate is you treat your customers differently. You treat them in a way that offers a value to them that they can't get anyplace else. And what we found, doesn't matter if it's yogurt or watches or cars or apartments, it
Yes.
doesn't matter. What matters is if the perception that a customer has aligns with them and they really walk away feeling they got more than what they paid for. It beat out their expectations. They experienced genuine wonder or awe in their experience. There's a whole list of things there that will connect a human to something in a deeper way. That human will come back to get that feeling again and again. It doesn't matter what
Right.
it is.
Right. And I think another small example of that, as our audience knows, like it wasn't just about selling movies for Walt Disney. It was,
Mm,
that was a thing that happened, but he quickly realized like there was more to it than that. There was something
right.
that the human desired that they wanted to connect to, and if somebody like thought, okay, well, I want to sell a movie or I want to sell a T-shirt, like I didn't go to the Disney store growing up because I just wanted to find a T-shirt. I went because I found a message, a why, some kind of story that resonated me with enough that it wasn't even about the
That's
T-shirt
right.
anymore. It was about that thing that I felt a part of, which I think is the
Right.
second piece to your philosophy, is community. I think that
Yeah.
when you are able to achieve this kind of brand storytelling, building community becomes so much easier. So do you find that community, especially in businesses, is something that we might be working towards in the future, or you see kind of a trend for it as well too?
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of what I would call audience, right? If you think
Oh.
of a performer, right? Fill in your favorite musician or performer. They have an audience of fans. They may be fans with other performers as well, but for that particular performer, they have an audience of fans. They buy their albums, they listen to the music, they go to concerts, they buy products. Okay, well, that's a human to a human. Well, let's mix it up. Let's think of Apple, right?
Mm,
Apple products. That's amazing. The emotional connection with an electronic device. That's pretty amazing. People sleeping outside of stores to get the newest one so you can early adopt. That group of fans, you can't have fans with customers. You have fans with audiences, and as you've called them, rightly so, communities, right?
mm.
I've been in meetings and somebody will say, "Well, let me airdrop something to you because I'm an Apple customer," and
Yes.
somebody says, "Oh, well, I have an Android phone." Well, what do the Apple people in the room do? Oh, right. I'm not nothing, no shade against Android, but
Right,
that's
right,
when you instantly get that feeling of community. Or Lululemon, right? There's
right.
lots of places you can buy athletic wear, but you can't go to the store and do yoga in any other place but Lululemon, right? I mean, how cool is that?
Right. I think it's amazing. I also think too, as we kind of dig deeper into this concept, it's a very it can seem complicated, but really it's simple. It's taking the human side of your business and remembering that no matter what you sell, or no matter what you do, there's going to be a human interacting with another human in some way. We have a comment here on LinkedIn. It hasn't popped up on my chat, but I'm going to go ahead and read it for you. I
Great.
saw from you, Nathan. Nathan S. Brooks Shoe Company has exceptional customer service, making returns and replacements painless. They go above and beyond every time, and to little surprise, perhaps that's a big reason why they have such brand loyalty. So I would agree,
Mm.
to talk about the follow up of the experience is potentially even more important than just the why. Of course, the why is important, but really holding
Right.
to that brand promise. And I think some of your experience with that and some of the stuff you've done with Universal or Disney, the customer service side is so important. Would you agree?
I so agree. Every part of the journey for the customer is so important with the brand. And as Nathan has said with Brooks, I'm not a Brooks customer, but I that what you said absolutely resonates because consistency is the important thing, right? In the example I gave, two or three parts of my journey as a customer with the brand that I purchased from were great and they were consistent. But one really big part, when I had a problem, it was inconsistent and it had such an impact. So
Mm,
when once you've defined that story, I don't want to repeat myself, but
yeah.
that gives you the North Star, right? That gives you the ability as a company, as a brand, to invest across that range of touch points and maintain consistency. Nothing speaks to an audience more than consistency. If it's a restaurant, if it's again a performer, those types of things, that's why you go there as a fan yourself. It's because you want that same emotional connection over and over.
We also have Theron Langhorn, who's commented, and they say, I think it helps to dive into the brand's history, background, their values, and their mindset. Think of a business as a person and realize that there's more to them than just a product or service. Exactly what we're saying, like totally in line with that. I think I'd love
Agreed.
to just talk a little bit more about something exciting too that I've heard, which is you were recently a contributor in the book How Does Disney Do That with James Warda. Okay, so show us the book. Tell us what's going on with the book. What is it about? There it is. Woo! We got the book, guys. Listen, I'm so excited for this book, and I would love to, especially because we were just kind of joking earlier. There was a foreword written by a very, very just historically amazing
A legend
Imagineer as
now,
well.
a legend.
A
That's
legend, Joe
right.
Rody too.
Officially.
But officially, so but yeah, so tell us a little bit about the book and the process for it and what we can expect from it.
Excellent. Well, thanks for the opportunity to talk about it. More than just trying to promote a product, I really think that it's an important read. It was a
Right.
3 year labor of love between James and I, and literally thinking about it less than just Disney, because Disney's an important part of the book, but it really is a conversation between a fan of themed experiences and a former creator of themed experiences for Disney, right? So it's this
Yes.
conversation, and there are contributors on both sides. There are fans, people who love to experience Disney, and then there's former Imagineers and individuals, cast members on that side. And I just think that's a really important conversation right now for that engagement to take place. It's really goes into what we've been talking about, this emotional connection between an experience and a brand. James always took his family to Disney, and it was important to him, but he would never consider himself, if he was here, he would say, I wasn't really a fan like I am now. But they went on Flight of Passage at Disney's Animal Kingdom, Pandora, and he came out and he had tears in his eyes, and he was like, I don't understand this. I'm a 57-year-old man. Why am I crying in this ride? And that sought him to kind of talk about it. He wrote some articles about it, and he and I got connected on LinkedIn. And I said, well, let's think about collaborating. And that was the beginning of a whole bunch of work to get there. So excited to have that in people's hands. It dropped on July 1st, and I hope everybody loves it.
Well, I'm so excited about it too. I haven't read it yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. And from what I understand, you know, it's that balance, that creativity of both. it's the balance of emotion, creativity, innovation, but yet operations as well too, that really ties all of this to bring it to life, you know? So
So
for
true.
for a brand, I'm sure there's people out there that are listening to this and go, okay, like we want to be innovative, we want to be creative, but also how do we know that this is going to make us money? How do we balance the way that we know our brand to be what it is now to what we want it to be, you know? What would you say to somebody that's kind of worried or thinking that through?
A lot of companies think that, right? I mean, now that I'm running my own company, I
Right.
deal with brands internationally. And one of the things that I've realized, and you get spoiled working for somebody like Disney or Universal, who
Right.
invests a lot of money to keep it maintained, right? As you said,
Mm,
Rita, it's operations. And in a sense, the first we call it a first article cost, right? The investment in the theme park, the investment in the attraction or the land, that first cost, it's expensive, right? Those are multi-billion dollar investments, but it's
right.
even more expensive to maintain it, to train the cast members, the frontline employees, to train the managers, train the trainers, to continue that brand and to maintain that experience. And what you discover when you are working for other companies in the world is they don't get that. They think in their minds, I'm going to drop the money. I'm going to invest in an attraction like Disney or like Universal does, and I'm going to put the money in it and I'm going to get the same results. And what I end up telling them is the same results come from the big picture, which is the life cycle of that thing. So it is 100% possible. Disney does it. Universal does it. Other brands do this, but it's something that has to be focused on as a culture of that company, of that brand from the very beginning. And just translate that to any of the brands that we've talked about or any of the products or services. Consistency in maintaining that experience, that's critical.
Well, I was thinking we could do a fun little Disney-fied example of this, a little workshop, if you will. So
Love it.
let's get creative and let's see if you're down
Roll
for
up my
this, okay?
sleeves. Here we go.
Let's roll up our sleeves. All right. So let's pretend that we are an Agrabah. Okay. We are an Agrabah in Aladdin's world. Okay. And you've met the gentleman who sells the lamps to all of the various people in the markets. And he's in the marketplace. He's like, hello, my friend. Would you like to buy a lamp? Would you buy a lamp? And he's like, he comes up to you. He's like, Theron, my friend, I need a website. I don't know. I cannot just go to these markets anymore. You know, he's ready to go to ecom. He's ready to expand his business. He's made his fame from getting Genie out there, and people know that he's a good supplier, okay, of the lamps. So the first, what would, if we were sitting down, I don't remember his name, but let's call him Mr. Lamp Guy. If we were sitting down with Mr. Lamp Guy of lamps.com unlimited, what would be the first thing that we ask him to help bring his brand story to life?
Perfect. Well, to me, the first thing would be what is the function of your product, and
Okay.
that's to bring illumination, right? That's the
Right.
very first thing. Regardless of what you do with the lamp, that's what you would need it for. You'd only need it in periods of darkness,
Right.
and the lamp is illuminated by probably a couple of different means. It involves flame, it involves some kind of fuel, it's something like that. So we would then begin to work with Mr. Lamp Guy and
Yes.
figure out ways to make the lamp brighter, to make it
Mm,
last longer, to make it lighter, to make it more convenient, to think about all the different uses that a customer might have for that lamp and work on improving those things. That would bring differentiation to the product. That's the very
mm.
first thing. Innovation to the product to make it easier for the end user, more convenient. Maybe you offer it in multiple colors, so now the end user, now they feel really great because you're appealing to their aesthetic and it fits in all my rooms. Maybe it's not flame, maybe it's a little bit of the Genie's magic dust, so it never
Yes.
runs out of illumination. You get where I'm
Yes.
going. And then so
Right.
that's one aspect. The second aspect is he's got to move these lamps. He has to sell them. So then we would talk about, well, what's your messaging about these lamps? How do you expose the differentiation that you've brought to your product? And how do you promote that to people? How do you demonstrate a true difference? What are some means for doing that? If it's Agrabah, maybe you don't have the internet. Maybe you have other creative ways that you have to bring this. Maybe you fly carpets to people's homes and deliver. Maybe there's
Yeah.
some real definition. So, in a sense, to me, it's two prongs. It's the product's got to live up to it. It's got to differentiate, and then the way that you actually access your customers, the way that you serve them, the way that you repair your product, what your service is like. Those two things, and many other things in between in our modern world that Mr. Lamp Guy doesn't have to worry about.
Yes.
Those all those things have to be they have to be consistent. That way, you're
Mm.
kind of hitting on all the cylinders of that, and that will differentiate you in the market.
That's so important. I want to double down. Even though it's a fun example, what you said is significant regarding the differentiation. Lately, I've been learning a lot about something called category design. And I don't know if
Mm,
this is something that you've looked into. Maybe you have. I'm sure you have. But it's a kind of a shoot off of this concept of formulaically figuring out, oh, what's your differentiation, right? So yeah,
mm,
everybody sells lamps, but not everyone sells a lamp that never runs out of power. So yeah,
right.
that's a great story,
Well,
like that's just a fun example.
think about the different brands that everyone, any listener knows about right now. And one of the first things I would have said to Mr. Lamp Guy is, if you make improvements in your product, why call it a lamp? Why not focus on the benefit it brings? So focus on
Mm,
illumination and focus on you can see better. Think about what kind of light it brings into your living space. Do you create patterns on the outside so the light itself projects patterns and makes your space feel alive? And then you're less focused on the actual product, and you're more focused on the benefit of the result that it brings.
to kind of in a little squirrel moment here, but I'm just so excited talking about this, to and bring
Rabbit
it back
hole.
to real rabbit hole. I'm feeling like Alice. I need to go down a rabbit hole on a question here. And what I would love to know is, in your time, in all of your experience, Universal, Disney, what you're doing now, what's been a project that you've worked on that you felt like, wow, I really got to get creative in this and it had the most amazing results? And here's why. Like, what is there like a favorite or standout one that you got to like really work on and it kind of had firework, results for you at the end that you're like stoked on?
Definitely. I'm gonna pull one of those classic things, and I sorry for that. I do a lot of work in Saudi Arabia, and I'm extremely proud of the massive giga level work that I've been invited to participate in and help other companies with. But I can't talk about any of it. So
Okay.
one
Okay.
thing that I will talk about is a family brand that I got to work with early, so maybe 2.5 years ago, so early as I started my company. They're a 53, 50, probably 55-year-old now family
Mm,
brand in the Caribbean, and they're a retailer. And they actually hired me to help them with one of their brands. And
okay.
what was actually two of their brands. One was more family focused, and one brand was a specific female brand. And I think what I'm most proud of was putting this process to work with them. And what we realized after we created the brand story and everything, I'll focus in on the female brand. Their primary customers are North American, so Canada and the U.S. women who come to the Caribbean, and you're enjoying the sand, the sea, the
Yeah.
sun, the fun, all that stuff. So
Yes.
what we built a brand story around their brand, and then we were concentrically going out. I was helping them to expand beyond to the flagship designer of their store and all those things. And we got to their marketing material, and their marketing material, because they're a Latin based company, I would consider them as a US male, that the images were more hypersexualized of the
Mm,
models. And
mm.
the models themselves, in my opinion, didn't represent the range of women, female women type, right, in North America, their customer base. So I brought this up to them, and we it had a great conversation. And the result was, I was so surprised. They went back and actually changed their marketing. They showed a wider range of female races. They showed different sizes. They showed women with their arms around each other being buddies and having fun, as opposed to being hyper sensualized like that. So I'm just really excited to create a North Star and then be able to align all of these other elements of their brand with it and to have them see it be successful or even more successful.
Right, and it's so important to that's the kind of Imagineering detailed thinking that I obsess over and nerd and love, right? Because one could just think, "Oh, we just need a model for an image. We find a beautiful woman, we put her on the ad, and that's it. We have completed the advertisement." But no, no, it goes more than that. There's details, just like when you wait in line for a ride at Universal or Disney. I mean, listen, I did go to Universal. I know I love Disney, but I did sneak over, okay? And what
They
I
got some great
love
stuff there.
I'm pretty sure I mean, it's actually kind of amazing. Okay, don't not gonna lie, but the line at Universal for, the Harry Potter ride, basically, you go inside the castle and, like, it feels
Right.
like you're in the movie, like, no detail is left unturned,
Yeah.
just thought of, right?
Yeah.
So, for
Right.
an ad or even a social media post, like, you really have to think not what do I want to post, but what does my audience want
Yeah.
to see? What will my audience think or feel?
Your
Um,
audience wants you want your audience to imagine themselves in that space. You want them to see what they would look like in that bathing suit or sun hat or
yes.
towel. And the previous the example that I gave previously, their models were it was very limited, right? There was just
Mhm.
a lot of similarity in their models. So by bringing that diversity, I think it opened it up to more a broader range of their customers who saw the ad and they're like, "Oh, that's somebody who looks like me. That I could look like that. I could have fun like this too." That's so important. Again, we're dealing with humans here, so you
Yes.
have to think about that wide range of your human audience and who's going to interact with your brand.
I think another example that we can touch on that's relevant to LinkedIn or just business trends in general is I'm seeing a huge rise in person conferences and conventions. They've always been a thing, but really to more even niche markets, if you will, like
Mm,
an emphasis on in person experiences and kind of bringing those back to life. And I
yeah.
would love from your knowledge or perspective to hear a little bit on what do you think makes events of those nature really stand out and be successful in the long term.
I believe this technology of virtual connection. It's important. It absolutely has a place. You can do a lot more virtually than you can if you had to physically travel there. So there's no doubt about that. But it is
Right.
no substitution, in my humble opinion, for in real life, in person connections. I think humans need that, right? You look across the room, you see somebody, you can read the body language, you can communicate so much better, and you can also create an experience that you feel immersed in. Some friends of mine in the World Experience Organization just had their summit in New York recently, and I wasn't able to go. But you look at what actually took place there. They're an organization about global experiences that are
Mm,
filled with people from who are all walks of experience creation, whether it's design or, I mean, Paul Zak, who talks about the science of immersion, is there. And that physical environment was really, really cool. You walk in and you feel like you're a part of it. Being in that kind of habitat or ecosystem that is thematically designed to kind of supercharge the reason that you even gather. I just think that that's so much more powerful than a virtual connection.
right. I think it's like you said, it's a nice entry point into building those connections. But
Yeah.
from what I've seen, even in what I do with podcast production, is we've been really enjoying connecting and doing some of the interviews at these conferences, so that it's that moment of shared experience. Like we're both
Mm,
here to learn and do this thing, but you get to take a picture with the person right then and there. Maybe you get to have a meal after or something, and there's something about those touch points that you
yeah.
can't quite replicate on a live stream,
It's so
but
true.
But if you don't do any type of video at all, then, then you're preventing yourself from maybe even getting to that point. What do you
Yeah.
think?
It really I was just thinking it really is the representation, the physical representation of the hero's journey, right? Because
Yes,
you travel, you have a goal in mind. Today's travel is not without complication or difficulty. So just like the
right.
hero's journey, you have complications and difficulty. You need help to
Yes.
get there. You get there, you acquire some new knowledge. You take artifacts from your journey. You are transformed. You go through some sort of transformation, and then transfer back or travel back, and you're now in a new normal. So I love that about that, and about conferences. And it pains me deeply when I go to a conference and it is dry as the Sahara.
It's like a hot mess.
Everybody speaks in monotone. Nobody knows how to spell story.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, it's like I'd rather not spend $300 to do this.
Mm.
So I think, buy a vowel and get a clue. If you run an event, build a story around it, think about the hero's journey, and really make it worth the travel so that people feel transformed from that experience. And if they build an emotional connection with it, if you do it right, just like a product or service, they're going to want to come back year over year over year.
What advice would you give to your former self when you first started getting into all of this? Like, if you could go back and say, hey, Theron, hey, little guy, let me tell you, this is what I think you should learn or focus on because what your accomplishments have really been truly amazing and just the work that you've been able to do. What advice would you give that to your younger self for maybe someone who's just like that and that they're part of their journey and they're listening?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I do on occasion have an opportunity to talk with students and kind of be a part of mentoring their early part of their career journey, or maybe the end part of their academic journey. And what I would have told myself and what I work hard to try to communicate to them is, you find a lot of them are especially in the themed entertainment world, are very focused on joining Disney, or they're very focused on joining Universal Creative, Imagineer Universal Creative. And they have that as a vision and a goal. And what I try to tell them is, I said, look, this world is huge. This industry is massive, and those two are giants. And in many ways they do things better than the other in lots of different and various ways, and they all have their merits. But keep your sights broader. There are many other companies that you could work for where you get a much broader range of experience. And that's what I would have told myself. I stumbled upon Imagineering. I didn't know about them. And I will be forever blessed from what I learned there. But I would have liked to have understood earlier in my career about the breadth of the experience economy, the
Mm.
ideas that are presented there, and how the education that you get working in the themed entertainment world, for example, is really applicable in the outside world, because so many brands are so hungry, not just for story, but for experience. And if I had I known that, my career would have been a little different. Maybe I would have extrapolated more information along the way, but that's what I wish I knew.
Right now, what in your own hero's journey for your business currently, where are you currently at in that story? And what have you learned recently that you think that others you're like, yeah, let me put you onto this. This is really helpful for what you've been doing as because this is not easy to be an entrepreneur.
That's true. It's always on, right? There's no
Yes,
there's no such thing as a paid vacation as a solopreneur.
right.
I think what the thing that I'm most passionate about is really what you invited me to talk about today. That's really, and as you can see, hopefully your audience sees, it's a culmination of a lot of different things.
Right.
Where what I've come to realize in my firm, I started with what I knew, and that was the end to end project process. Right? You start with negotiations with the client, you build the team, blue sky, you go, and I've engaged with many different companies, kind of still replicating pieces of that experience. And what I came to realize, and what my focus now is for myself and my company, is to be engaged with the C suites and governments really early in the process, and not look at taking the whole journey with them, but helping them to be informed about everything that we're talking about, exposing them to
Right.
this idea that their brand can be more, that their customer base could be audience members. You could achieve a type of loyalty, right? Maybe loyalty is too strong of a word, but affinity. You could
Yes.
grow that brand equity. You could do things different and grow differentiation. That's my focus right now. That could be a keynote, it could be a workshop, it could be, where some company will bring me on for a dedicated amount of time to help them through that. And frankly, that I'm having the most fun doing, because it feels like SWAT. You come in
Yes.
real quick and you're pinpointed with what you're solving, and it has a lot of meaning, and you leave feeling like you really helped. And I don't know,
Yes.
for me, that's awesome.
Well, I think it's important to note that because there is so much you could do. I'm sure a brand might come to you and be like, "Hey, we need help with everything," but that's it's vulnerable, and it provides a little bit of reassurance that for your own business, whatever it is for any of you listening, like, yeah, it'll take some time, but you'll start to figure out the parts that of what you offer that you love, and the parts that you want to specialize in, and some that you're like, all right, well, we'll leave that alone, kind of a
So
thing.
true.
We have
If
a
you have
question, by the way. Sorry to
Oh, great.
interrupt. So Nathan S. He has a comment and a question. So he says, in Pine and Gilmore's book, they discuss how the customer is the product, how customers want to transform themselves or to become different. That lends itself nicely to themed entertainment where you immerse yourself in the environment, but it may be trickier for other industries. How do you leverage this concept in the brand storytelling process and make it genuine, especially those savvy customers who value that authenticity?
Great question, Nathan. I think I would say, rather than getting um, too bogged into the weeds as the details of how themed entertainment does it, it's a really great process, and I think extrapolating out of that, the big portions that can apply to other brands is really important, and that's what I would encourage anyone to consider doing. I think at the end of the day, a customer, like a Disney, a guest wants to be invited in to participate in the story. So whenever you're designing an environment, a themed environment that's based on a story, where you've added enough layers within that experience, scent, taste, touch, hearing, etc., that really make a customer, make a guest feel immersed. You're inviting them to be a part of the story, and that's what sort of gives them permission to feel safe and to see themselves within that story. So my challenge to you to answer that question would be, whatever brand that we could potentially talk about, whether it's a restaurant or a mall or a retail brand or a pharmaceutical brand, an online shopping brand, um, it would be identifying the story that you want to tell, and how do you invite visitors to be engaged in that story, and to feel safe in that place where they can, hang out and not only feel a benefit but also contribute. People want to be the heroes of their own stories, and
Mm.
how do we create stories that enable them to do that? As the way I would answer it.
That's lovely. Thank you for that answer. I also have a question to ask for you. I have a friend on. Her name is Alex McKenzie. Alex is a hi, Alex. Alex is a accounting consultant, and she says that this has been very insightful with great examples. I would love to hear from you there. And for someone who is a solopreneur of maybe that type of business, they are a service provider.
Mm.
What is something that they can do to turn their customers into audience members or fans? Some small things within their business process that they can take to implement something like that.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, first of all, being in accounting, I'm so grateful that there are people like you in this world that do math, because that's something I'm not great
Yes.
at. And I'm so grateful for people that not only do it well, but that are passionate about it. So kudos and thank you. I think I would say for solopreneurship, it's you have to differentiate yourself. Your knowledge, and a term that I absolutely adore is knowledge commerce. How do you make your knowledge commercially viable to the rest of the world. And that's thinking through what you know, what you love, what you're passionate about. It may, hopefully, it encourages you to constantly learn. That's one of the things that I always encourage people is to stay curious, to put yourself into scenarios where you're not 100% sure you can do it. You're excited about it, but it's like, I'm going to give myself a try here, because that forces you to level up, right? To use a gaming term. You have to learn, you have to adapt, you have to implement, you have to fail fast so that you can get that learning and get up to that place. Those are just some principles that I would throw out. Your knowledge, your base of knowledge, and the way that you interact with people, those are your single greatest assets as a solopreneur. One last thing I'll say, your superpower, and this is true for anybody listening, your superpower is your ability to listen. Active listening is a superpower. Not many people do it. They always think about the next thing that they're going to say. But if you truly listen, you'll learn from others, and you'll learn from your clients, and you'll be able to solve their problems more completely, more succinctly, than somebody else who's just thinking about the next thing they're going to say. Rita, I cannot hear you. I think you might be muted.
Yes, live. Here we are. I was just giving more weight to the statement that you said. It was powerful, and it needed some space to really breathe there.
I thought you were doing a mime, and I was like, yes, that's so cool.
I was gesturing with enthusiasm for how lovely that response was.
I love it.
Either way, I do think that what you said was poignant, because no matter how large your company is or how small, whether solopreneur, there's always a way to look at what you're doing and find that connection, find that point. And I did want to ask you, if someone wanted to learn a little bit more about what their customer is looking for, that archetype, how do we go about doing that research if you're not a multi-million dollar firm with like a data research department? Like, what are small things we can do to learn more about the things our customers like, want to listen to, that we can apply today or tomorrow?
Well, I'm a firm believer in the technologies that we have at our fingertips today. There's so many people, expert level, mastery level people, who really give a lot of information for free. They talk a lot about it. There's a lot of YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, right? There's a lot of people out there that are freely share because they're just passionate about it. And that's one of my problems, if I'm being transparent, is I get really passionately talking about something, and then I'll get off a podcast or something, and I'm like, wait a second, did I just give away a bunch of information that I would normally charge for? Doesn't matter. I was passionate, and there it is. So I would say lean into all of the information that's available to you now. I mean, think of a platform like LinkedIn. Oh my goodness, millions and millions and millions of people, and at least millions of them are passionate about what you do. Connecting with them, starting conversations, engaging in community dialogues like that. Those are all things you can do for next to nothing. The next level is buying books, subscribing to different organizations or associations, going to mixers and meeting people in a particular area. If you're leaning into a particular type of customer, I know that there are lots of memberships that you can have online to databases that you can query, that you can ask, that you could actually go to spaces and shop there and look at them. Right, when my last role at Imagineering was with the cruise line, and before we started designing the 3 new ships for the Triton class, we sailed on every single cruise line that was in every segment of the world that Disney sailed in. So we could completely understand every aspect of their business before we started even brainstorming. So that was not cheap, by the way, but that was something that you could actually do to really get in there. Oh dear, the mime routine is back.
Sounds like a tough job to go on all of those cruises and hang out, you know. Oh, I wonder what this is so hard work, you know. This cruise, meet
I
all those
always get that.
people.
I
No, but
always get that.
it is important to go where the people are, a la
Yeah,
Ariel. You know, you got to go where the people are. And I think that it's a small thing you can do that if you know, you could go to a conference, for example. Is your
yeah.
ideal customer at a conference? Maybe you're not there to go to the actual convention, but maybe you're there, you know, going to the bar or a hotel restaurant and just interacting and getting to know people, right? That's something that
Great
I
way to under
personally love to do.
Absolutely, a great way to see your competition, who else is doing what you do or what you wanna do. Before you launch something, go to a conference, go to several conferences that are in the market that you're in, and just check it out. That way you can get the best lay of the land and see how you can differentiate.
Absolutely. We have another question. Theron Langhorn. As much as designers are willing to tackle new challenges, are segment brands generally willing to invest in new immersive experiences or ventures? We'll keep it up here, and we'll see what you have to say about it.
That's great. Theron's a friend, and, I don't think it gets any better than 2 Therons on a podcast.
Yes,
I'm just
yes.
saying.
They're
Just
in
saying.
Inception. Okay, we're getting real weird
It's
here, but we love it.
It's amazing, it's amazing, and
I
and
love
Theron,
it.
of course, Langhorne is amazing. I would say, Theron, um, this really what your question involves a lot of different aspects, right?
Mhm.
Those, large companies, those segment brands, right? It's all about, CapEx and OpEx, right? It's their capital, investments, what they spend on that, and their operational investments, and I think fortunately, as we've seen, in themed entertainment, if you wanna pick a market, we're talking about Disney, and Universal, right? There, you're now seeing a lot more investment and a lot more focus, a lot of announcements. I mean, Universal is talking about building a park in the UK. They're building a location in northern Texas. I mean, it's this expansion. Disney comes out and says, what is it, 17 billion or something over the next 10 years in Walt Disney
Yeah.
World. So that's exciting for people like Theron, like myself, like others in the industry that are looking at that, and we get excited. And as you said, we're willing to tackle new challenges. The challenge becomes, I don't know if you've experienced this, but the challenge becomes when you have a company like a Disney, for example, they've purchased so much intellectual property that they're
Yes.
not really interested in original IP creation anymore. They only want, Avengers 17.6, right?
Yeah.
And that creates a little thing we call brand fatigue, right? When you have movies
Mhm.
and television shows and streaming and bed sheets and underoos and all these things themed after a particular IP, and then you keep trying to launch things. By the time it gets to the theme park, because that takes 3 to 5 years, people may in fact already be like, oh,
Yeah.
and $100 million, $200 million investment is really hard to just change. So
Yes.
I don't know if that answers your question, but those are thoughts on my mind related to that.
I have the same thoughts, and I think any business might go through that. There is such a thing as doing a little too much, or kind of overdoing it with
Right.
the content or with the partnerships, or you know, brand fatigue. I never really heard of that concept before, but it makes sense in the way you describe it, and I think that's why it is even more important to remember the why. I think if you acquire too many
Hmm.
pieces of the puzzle, that the why, the core message can be a little muddied in my opinion.
Sure.
And I'm hoping that, you know, they kind of come back from that in some ways.
Me too.
Um, yeah, a little Disney talk moment here is when I heard that they're getting rid of like the arcade, for example, like the
I
Frontierland,
saw
the little
that.
the shooting range, and then like less exciting, but you know, just more in the foodie in me. They got rid of waffles at Sleepy Hollow, and I was like, touch everything, but don't touch my waffles, guys.
Don't touch the
Okay,
waffles.
hands off my waffles. But I think it's the same thing. It's just like when you're cooking in the kitchen, if you add a little too much seasoning, you add too many
Right.
flavors, it can be overpowered. So for your
Yeah.
own brand, if you're listening to this, like, you know, maybe you're at that point. Maybe you've done so much that you've muddied your own waters, and
Yeah.
you know, you have to take a step back and go, what really is important?
Well, think about another example. I'll just take us back to the pandemic, right? If you just
Right.
think about the way retail brands reacted to the pandemic. Everybody's at home, everybody's wearing masks, all these stores are shut down. E-commerce goes through the roof, right? If you look at that curve, it's woo, billions
Yeah.
and billions and billions, and all of these retail brands were loving it, patting themselves on the back, giving all of the execs a bonus. What happened when the businesses started to reopen? Pandemic was going away, everybody was going back out. These brands, how many of them, I think there's very few, how many of them actually thought to ourselves, wait a second, our customers are human beings. They've been trapped. Now they're going to want to gather in groups and get outside and experience something. How many of them went back to their actual physical stores, reinvested in those stores, and created a whole new experience? So think about that. Now I'm free. I'm outside. I'm not buying
Right.
online anymore. I want to go do something amazing. And it was the same exact store that you went to before. And you're thinking, wait a second, they had a real once in human history opportunity to change things up, and they didn't. So it's what you're
Yes.
saying, Rita. You get so myopic on your brand, so used to doing the exact same things that you're always doing, you're too afraid to take a risk. And I think that can hurt us sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, that isn't how the best businesses in the world were built because of some amazing risk that was taken, right?
Right.
Like, I think people are playing it a little too safe lately, and maybe
Yeah.
it's because
Way too
I'm
safe.
also not a numbers girl, but that could be it too. I don't know. All right, we have one last question, and then we'll start to round out. So, Eduardo
Great.
Farias commented, Joe Rody once made an insightful comment on how, alongside with the hero's journey in storytelling, the concept of Mircea Eliade's myth of the eternal return and how time, the connection, and touch points become a sacred ritual for the guests. What insights would you have in order to create this similar ritualistic experience for guests? I like that idea of the ritualistic experience.
Wow. Well, Eduardo, hi. Good to hear from you again. I'm not on the same plane as Joe Rody. There's a level of intelligence there, and I mean this realistically. Ever hearing Joe present, it's quite amazing from a storyteller's perspective. But what I would say is leaning into this idea of ritual. Maybe any of your listeners, Rita, could think about the way that they plan to take a Disney vacation or any vacation and look at the steps that they take. You would think of that as a ritual, right? Even if you're shopping for transportation, you're shopping for the hotel, you're thinking, well, what do we do when we get there? And you put all of those things together. Once you arrive, you go to the hotel, you take your shoes off, you flop on the bed, you get to the Magic Kingdom. I have to take a picture before we go through the tunnel into town square. All of those things, I think, form ritualistic behavior. And as a experience designer, I think about all providing an environment with that is so rich in different areas of experience, and provides the opportunity for any visitor that comes to form their own ritual around all of the different things that we've included in there. And I think that's really important. Main Street isn't just a cookie cutter. Main Street at Disney World or Magic Kingdom isn't just a cookie cutter. It's not a section of Missouri somewhere. It's an idealized version of that particular age of town. Architecture and styling is taken from all over the place. And the reason that that was done is because people engage with different parts of that experience in different ways, and that forms
Mm,
their own ritual. We got to stop at Starbucks on Main Street to grab our whatever before we go to, Tarzan's Treehouse. That's what we do every year. It's fantastic.
yes.
I just think that's important, and I'm glad you brought that up, Eduardo, because anybody who has a brand can think about those moments. Those are really important, Instagrammable life
Yes.
moments that you sit down, you capture that, and that becomes a ritual.
I think that's a great way to round out that this segment. I mean, listen, we're all Disney nerds here. We could talk about this for like probably 2 hours. So, um, but I agree. For me personally, my Disney ritual is yes, I always got to go to Starbucks, but I also have to get a Mickey pretzel. I get a Mickey pretzel, and then I got to go just sit in the lawn and look at the castle and go, ah,
Nice.
here I am. So,
So
anyways,
nice.
Darren, thank you so much for joining me today on this second live stream, having coming back again. If anyone wants to connect with you or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way that they can do that?
Excellent question. Two ways. LinkedIn, of course. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I would also encourage you to check out my website. It's thedesignerscreativestudio.com. And that explains a little bit more about narrative experience design, what I do. You can have a look at, I have a media collection of interviews and podcasts and things that I've done, and some of the work that I've been able to do. And I hope you enjoyed that journey as well.
Yes, amazing. All right, everyone. This has been a live version of Bippity Boppity Business. Thank you so much for joining us. And that's a wrap for today. Have a magical day.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Bippity Boppity Business. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review in Apple or listen to us anywhere you prefer listening to your podcast. Until next time, have a magical day.